It's a fascinating question, isn't it? How can three nations born from the exact same country end up with completely different ideas about right and wrong? Today, we're diving into the legacy of Yugoslavia to see why Croatia, Serbia, and Slovenia, once part of a single state, are now walking on such different moral paths.
And this isn't just us spitballing ideas here. Everything we're about to talk about comes from a really detailed academic study that tracked 25 years of social change. We're going straight to the data, to the findings published in the journal Sexuality and Culture to see what the evidence actually tells us. So here it is, the central puzzle we're trying to solve. You have these sibling nations, all from the same Yugoslav family, but somehow they ended up on completely different journeys when it comes to their core social values. How does that happen? To really get what's going on today, you have to rewind the clock and look at how different these paths were right from the start. Slovenia's break was pretty quick, relatively peaceful, but Croatia and Serbia, their stories were forged in years of brutal conflict. And then check out the EU dates. Slovenia was integrating with Europe a full decade before Croatia. These different starting lines are absolutely key. Okay, so we've talked about these diverging paths in theory, but what does it actually look like in the numbers? Let's get right to the evidence.
So the researchers had this incredible tool, the World Values Survey, and this gives us a window stretching 25 years, from the mid-90s all the way to today. It lets us watch how public opinion changed not just as a single snapshot, but like a movie playing out over decades. And here is where we see something pretty dramatic. Get this. Back in the 90s, Slovenia was actually more conservative about homosexuality than Croatia was. But fast forward 25 years, and they've completely flipped. Slovenia became way more accepting, while in Croatia, the opposition to homosexuality actually went up. And you see the exact same pattern with abortion. In Croatia and Serbia, the percentage of people who condemn abortion almost doubled. At the same time, in Slovenia, opposition was cut by more than half. I mean, the trend is just undeniable. So let's be clear, this isn't just a small drift. We're talking about a profound split. Two nations turned towards social conservatism, while one went full speed ahead towards liberalism. And this just makes our central puzzle even more pressing. Why? All right, so the study offers a really powerful explanation for this split. And it all comes down to a concept called religious nationalism. Let's break down exactly what that is.
So basically, think of it like this. When a new nation is trying to figure out who it is, especially after a war, it often grabs onto religion as a way to build a strong shared identity. It becomes this tool to say, this is who we are, and maybe just as important, this is who we are not. And this often means promoting traditional family values, which, directly affects views on things like sexuality and abortion.
And this slide just connects the dots perfectly. For Croatia and Serbia, coming out of the ashes of war, religion became a unifier. Catholicism in Croatia, Orthodoxy in Serbia. But Slovenia, with its peaceful transition, it just didn't feel that same urgent need for a religious anchor. Instead, it looked outward, trying to build an identity based on a more secular Western European model. Okay, so this difference in values is deep, but how does it actually show up in the real world? Well, we can see it written right into their laws. This table just lays it all out. The legal situation for LGBTQ+ rights paints a super clear picture. You've got Slovenia, which is pretty much in line with Western Europe, full marriage and adoption equality. On the complete other end of the spectrum is Serbia, the most restrictive. And then you have Croatia, kind of sitting in the middle. These laws are almost a perfect mirror of the values we saw in the survey data. But here's where it gets really nuanced. That 2013 referendum in Croatia that banned same-sex marriage, well, look at the turnout, just 37%. This hints that maybe the result was driven by a really motivated, passionate minority, and not necessarily a reflection of the entire country. That's a super important detail. And just to make things even more complicated, when it comes to abortion, the laws are pretty much the same in all three countries. They're all liberal, and that's a direct legacy from their shared Yugoslav past. So you have this fascinating tension. Public opinion in Croatia and Serbia is getting more conservative on abortion, but the old laws are still on the books. It just goes to show you how sticky those old institutional legacies can be. So what does all of this add up to? Let's pull it all together and look at the study's big conclusion about the incredible power of history. This right here is probably the most powerful finding in the entire study. The researchers controlled for everything you could think of:
how religious someone was personally, their age, their gender, and after all that, the single biggest predictor of their social values wasn't their personal faith. It was simply which of the three countries they lived in.
So the real takeaway is this isn't a simple story of religious people versus non-religious people. It's so much deeper. It's about how a nation's collective experience, the memory of war versus peace, the challenge of building a new country, gets woven into the very moral fabric of a society. So to boil it all down, the path each nation took back in the 90s, a path of peace versus violence, of secularism versus religious nationalism, that's what set them on these very distinct tracks that are still defining them today.
And that leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought. History isn't just something you read about in a book. It's a living, breathing force that shapes how we see the world today. So as these three nations look to their future, you have to wonder, will the powerful gravity of their unique pasts just keep pulling them further and further apart?